Hey, everybody, welcome to CardFellas, the podcast show, the YouTube show, you name it. We are back this week with our Wednesday night show every Wednesday night at 10:30 Central on YouTube. You can join the show. So if you're listening on the podcast and you want to be a part of the show, go ahead and jump on there on YouTube on the CardFellas channel at 10:30. And we definitely love interaction with the crowd. And if you've got some good comments, we'll definitely share that with the crowd. Matt, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well. We missed some of the sarcasm last week when we were talking about the Bill Ripken F-face, and one of our viewers mentioned that the Pokemon card doesn't have the variations or doesn't have swear words or something. I completely missed it. So kudos to our listeners for being smarter than us, because that was a good one when I went back and looked at it. And Chris, you had to explain it to me. He's like, no, that's what he was actually making a joke. And I'm like, oh yeah, Pokemons don't have, F faces on the end of their bats. So the interaction is awesome. But if you're listening on the podcast, join us for a live show every Wednesday. And if you're watching us on Wednesday, go to the Apple Store. Or I guess the Apple Podcast, wherever you download your podcast is how they say it. We're on there, the CardFellas Show, and you just search that, and you'll be able to find us anywhere, everywhere. You can take us along with you. We'll hop in the back seat of your car if you want. For all we'll go on a road trip with you too. I mean, we're that accessible. I don't know how our families would like that too much, but at this point, I don't care. We just want to grow our audience and let people know that we're here for them when it comes to hobby talk.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of YouTubers I love to listen to on YouTube, and I'll just put it on YouTube and play it in my truck while I'm driving. But it would be so much better if they just made podcast versions of their show, which is what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, we've got the big topic today is 1984 Tops USFL football, but got a few other things we want to touch on before that. So I'll let you lead off there.
Yeah, this week, the big news in the hobby was one of your favorites, Chris. I know you're a big fan of Drake, the rapper. So he's getting into the hobby big time. And he was featured on Instagram Live with Mr. Goldin, Ken Goldin of Goldin's Auction there. And he's holding right there the kind of the holy grail, if you will, of the junk wax era. I'm just kidding. We could go back a couple episodes. We talk about the 86 Fleer being junk wax era. We were joking, of course. But there he is holding the holy grail of boxes, the 86 Fleer, of course, with the Michael Jordan. So anyway, bottom line is they broke this live on Instagram Live, and it was getting all kinds of live buzz. Like, if we get a viewer or two here, we're like super excited. Like everybody was talking about this in the moment. And he ended up pulling 3 Jordan base cards, 3 Jordan sticker cards. So it was like super hyper. I mean, it was awesome to see. There was a lot of energy. And all I kept seeing was, people kind of deflecting the haters. Oh, the hobby's dead, isn't it? Sarcasm. Oh, this is so great for the hobby. The hobby is thriving. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, you know what? The hobby is still in really good shape. It's not at its peak, but at the same time, it's like this. When a rich person comes in and does this, it doesn't really help the hobby. I mean, these high-end type of breaks, these high-end cards, those are always going to be something that's in command, in demand, in the spotlight, if you will, because people are treating this like art, like investments. So this Michael Jordan box, no matter who opened it, it would have been hyped. I don't see this really trickling down to, guys like me, guys like you, Chris, where we have a 1990 Fleer Michael Jordan PSA 8 on eBay. Nobody's going to get hyped up and be like, oh, I got to go get on eBay and buy every card. It's hard. You got to kind of temper it, and I think that's what the thing is that they kind of crossed my mind as I was watching it. I was like, this is really cool to watch this, but at the same time, it's too high end to really get to the trickle down effect of, again, grabbing the interest of the casual hobbyist to then go on eBay or, start buying cards that you and I have for sale. So it was fun to watch, but at the same time, I don't think this, is anything that's going to change, the game for the little guys. I don't know. Interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, again, fun to watch. I think it's kind of like you watching a YouTuber play a video game. It's one of those things that you kind of get to feel like you're part of it and you're doing it, but in the end, it's someone else who's doing it. But honestly, how many times do you get to sit back and watch someone open a box like that? So I think that's kind of the exciting part of it. There was some stuff. PSA actually put that up on their Facebook page. The cards that they were able to get in that break. It shows the 3 base cards and the 3 stickers. And PSA Cards says they're going to be grading these. Can't wait to see and show off the results. I think the interesting part of this post, though, is what you see down below, which is 226 comments. And I can tell you one thing. There weren't a whole lot of those that said, boy, I hope they get all 10s. Yes. Most of them were people talking about, Goldin Auctions is owned by Collectors Universe, which is the same company that owns PSA Card. And geez, I'll bet you they get all 10s on this. There's lots of saltiness in there on those comments, but I really think it's going to be the opposite. I mean, I kind of grew up in a situation where people thought, oh, maybe you'll get favored, maybe this, but what you find when you work in family is usually the family gets kind of the raw end of the deal. And I think that's what's going to happen here. Those cards are going to be heavily scrutinized when they get those cards graded. If they come back 10s and they're not 10s, people are going to know.
The integrity's gone, right? I mean, you're talking about the integrity of your company, and it's very public. That's the other thing. Yeah. And I think, you and I talked about this a little bit offline, was one of those cards looks really good. I mean, it really looks the center. Like there's a potential one of those could be 10, but you're right. If they get a 100% 10 rate, or even like an 80%, I mean, now you're starting to look at this and go, okay, that's the integrity of your company is really being questioned when we're in a time where PSA is heavily scrutinized, and to your point, I can't believe people were on the internet saying bad things. Is that a new thing, to complain on the internet, to go to social media and complain about something, especially PSA? Can you imagine being the community manager of the PSA social media accounts? It's like constantly you wake up, you're like, what are people going to shit on me for today? Oh, excuse me. I didn't mean to drop the S-bomb without a parental advisory. Last week it was okay. Today, maybe not so much. But, that's really kind of the reality. It's one of the things that we've come to recognize and realize that, PSA is not making anybody happy. And I'm going to talk a little bit later at the end of the show about some news about PSA that, kind of frames up the future of it. And it's kind of the current state of where the organization is and what they're looking to do. And it's based off a Forbes article that was written by a writer who interviewed Nat Turner and took a tour. And so it just got published today. So this is brand new. Some really interesting stuff that we'll be able to talk about. But, I think when you look at all this stuff, it is buzz. It's PR. Let's be honest. It's public relations. 100%. You're going to bring all these partners together. You're going to bring Drake, who brings this massive following outside of the hobby, together. I mean, it's masterful. It's masterful. But at the end of the day, it's also about big time money. And there's so few people that can operate in that area. And I think that's where you have to look at it and go, okay, Drake's not looking for the cards that I own. Goldin's not looking for the cards that I own. But if you can generate some buzz around the hobby, then that's fantastic. And maybe there is a trickle-down effect. I haven't seen it. And, but at the same time, again, PR, good PR, well done, PSA, well done, Goldin, well done, Drake. You guys captured everybody's attention for at least 24 to 48 hours until something else came along that was a shiny object.
Yeah, and that was Will Smith slapping Chris Rock.
It was. Yes, short-lived. Everything's short-lived. So we'll see what's next. But I tell you what will be next, and I think we're ready to move on. April 16th, the kickoff to a new NFL not NFL, a new football. USFL, baby.
I thought you were going to say something else. I thought you were going to say something else short-lived, the USFL.
Well, that was it. Maybe it is. Maybe it will be. But that gets us to our set that we're talking about today. It's the 1984 Tops USFL Set. And the reason this was my idea, I came up with this. I said, Chris, let's find something that is football related. And I said, 1984. And he probably looked at me and was like, yeah, 84, great year. Yeah, you had John Elway, Dan Marino. You had, let's see, who other rookies from that? Eric Dickerson, Howie Long, Darrell Green, Ricky Jackson, Morton Anderson, Dwight Stevenson, Andre Tippett, Jim Covert, Jackie Slater, Russ Grimm. Those are all the rookie cards out of Tops 84. Those are all Hall of Famers. But that's not the set we're talking about. We're talking about the good old-fashioned USFL that was around for 2 years, because this set is so unique and so rare that I thought it would be fun to talk about and do a little bit of research surrounding it. And right there, that's the guy who kind of got the league, you know, a little bit going, if you will, or, you know, gave it the attention that people should pay attention to. Herschel Walker.
Yeah, 1983, Herschel Walker was the big name. You know, of course, back then, you know, you got the cards the next year. So Walker was an 83 guy, but his rookie was an 84. Steve Young was kind of the outlier in that he was an 84 guy that got the card in 84. But yeah, Herschel Walker signed with the New Jersey Generals, and back then this is something new. I mean, the USFL had a lot of new stuff. They had the 2-point conversion, but they also had a salary cap. Didn't have one in the NFL. And it was really kind of a very loosely controlled salary cap, which ended up, I think, leading part of the reason why the league fell down. And I believe it was 1.8 million was the most you could sign someone to for a year. But Herschel wanted more. So they actually gave him the 1.8 million, and then he got a personal services contract as well through the owner, who at the time was, I think, a guy from the South. And he ended up selling the team to Donald Trump, who ended up honoring that contract as well. But yeah, they brought in Herschel Walker, and I think, you know, we can talk about the set. I kind of brought some stuff to talk about, a little bit of the historical context of the time, which is kind of what I do every week. And the league's first season was in 1983. At this time, the NFL, we were talking about Super Bowl 17. So it wasn't long ago there was 2 leagues. It wasn't long ago that, you know, if you were a 40-year-old guy in 1983, you remember the AFL and the NFL. So having this other football league, it wasn't crazy. The idea that another football league would be legitimate wasn't what we would think today. If you said we're going to start a league and compete with the NFL, you would just laugh at them. But at the time, people took it seriously. Obviously, they got some great players. I think that's really what the business plan was here, is that they were going to kind of try to replicate what the AFL did, and we're going to start a team. We're going to compete with the NFL for players. And I think their ultimate plan was that they would merge with the NFL, and that way you get your franchises and become a nice NFL owner without having to buy into the club. I think that was what the plan was. They were competitive in getting players. They got Herschel Walker. The next year they were able to get Steve Young, who would have been the number 1 pick in the draft that year. So they definitely went to compete with the NFL, which I think, again, this new league that they're coming out with that starts here in a few weeks ago is not going to be something that's competitive with the NFL.
No, it's not. And it's because the NFL contracts are so massive now. Back then it wasn't. When you're talking about $1.8 million, that was probably pretty competitive to what the NFL players were making. So you were giving, if not more, you know, especially those rookie contracts. It was very different back then. And so you have people like Herschel Walker, who was somebody. I mean, he was more than somebody. He was the next great running back to come out of Georgia and be an NFL prospect. And so for them to lure the USFL, to lure him away from the NFL, was a massive, massive shift change. And so I think other players saw this too as an opportunity to make some guaranteed money in what was considered a startup at that time. And the great thing about this for the USFL at this time, it was during a time, or it was during the spring. So they didn't compete against the NFL. And that was one of the big selling points was, you know, give us a chance during the spring to at least show you what we have, and we're bringing in these superstars. Herschel Walker had won a Heisman Trophy at Georgia, so he was a established superstar. You talk about Steve Young. There's some other guys that were, prominent in college that decided to go play in the league. And so Jim Kelly, Reggie White, you're talking about Hall of Famers, Doug Williams, Anthony Carter, Marcus Dupree was a phenomenal running back from Oklahoma. I mean, he was like Herschel Walker and had a knee injury. But, you start looking at some of those players that eventually would have NFL careers. They were signing in the USFL, so it gave the league a lot of credibility. And that probably prompted Tops to look at this and say, well, let's create a set for this league because, again, like you were saying, Super Bowl 17, NFL was relatively at its earlier, that would be considered earlier stages of the NFL. It's not nearly the massive monopoly it is right now. So, when you look at this Tops set, they produced it like a Tops traded set. There was 132 cards in it. The box was similar to one of those Tops traded sets that you had seen. The cards had, the clean look to them. You saw them right there. They had, the red, white, and blue. They tried to make it very patriotic. I'd say it's a very clean look. I think the team names were awful, in my personal opinion. The Express, the Showboats, the Bandits, the Gamblers. I don't think those are the greatest names. But at the same time, that's what you're kind of dealing with when you're a secondary league. But then you start looking at the back of the card. It kind of looked like an Easter egg. You got that hot pink and light blue, and it was a unique card. And I remember growing up in the hobby, I don't remember these cards ever kind of popping up into my purview or like anybody looking for these cards actively in 1984 or beyond. And that's why I think this set is unique. And I wanted to talk about it and do a little bit more research and share my findings with this, with our audience. Was all of a sudden it kind of popped up as this, kind of this rare set with unique players that eventually went on to become NFL icons. And that's where we ended up. And what I discovered was this set was extremely hard to find, B, extremely hard to find in any kind of good condition, like really good gem condition. And that's what I found interesting about this is I don't think people treated this very well in the moment in 1984. And I don't think a lot of people realized who was in these sets until after these cards have been either beaten up or the boxes had been beaten up, because it's hard to pull any good cards out of these boxes.
Yeah, you talked about the money. Reggie White, actually, his first contract with the Eagles, he took a pay cut from what he was making.
No kidding.
USFL, which was really interesting. So he was making less in the NFL than he was making in the USFL.
See, that's fascinating. See, that's the type of research, Chris, I rely on you for, because it just seems like you look at it and you go, why would a guy choose a different league over the NFL? It's the league, right? It's the Shield. It's the league. But it's, again, different time in 84, and money talks. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it definitely was a different time. We talked a little bit about Herschel Walker. He won the Heisman. That year, his first year there in 1983, he ran for over 2,400 yards, and that is still the pro football record. So that was kind of a cool thing that I saw too. Steve Young, when he signed in 84, and again, he didn't go into the NFL draft, and everybody thought he would be the number one pick in the NFL draft, signed a 10-year, $40 million deal with the LA Express. But again, we talk about that salary cap, and we're talking about a fledgling league. So instead of getting that, $4 million a year, he put it out into a 40-year annuity at $1 million a year. So pretty smart, except for the whole thing was defunct in 3 years.
It did, and that was the other part of this too. That this league went under. Basically the year that they decided we're going to compete with the NFL. It sunk the league.
Yeah,
it sunk the league.
They played in 83, 84, and 85, and then in 86, They were going to go into a fall league, and they challenged the NFL in the courts, the antitrust lawsuit. They won the case, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And they were awarded $3.
$1, and then it was they multiplied it by 3 for whatever reason. Yeah, $3. But just a unique story, and I think that's what also brings this set a little bit more attention to this set, is the uniqueness of the league. And I think everybody, when you go back and you read the story and you hear it, and these cards too, getting back to the actual set and the cards, these are considered XRCs. So these are like the rookie cards before they became rookies in the NFL, which, it still makes the cards, technically their rookie card, if you will. But the biggest thing with these cards, like I mentioned, was the centering. The centering on these cards was really difficult to find ones that were cut right. And so what I read and what I discovered was those boxes that they were kept into were really flimsy cardboard. I think you and I have handled our fair share of Tops traded boxes, but apparently these boxes were even more flimsy. So the cards didn't stay, anywhere protected like, a heavier stock of cardboard box. And it really shows when you start looking at the pop report. And that's the thing that really stunned me when I started to do the research. And I knew that this set was unique, but I didn't realize how unique it was when you're talking about the low population of these 10s. So like the Reggie White card, and we don't know how many sets Tops produced. Like that's one of the things that I've read. Like Tops was like, we're not going to tell you how many are out there. But the Reggie White card right there, it's been graded 1,952 times. There are 7 10s in the world. That's it. And so you start thinking like that, you're like, wow, okay, that's pretty rare. The Steve Young card, there's 29 10s out of 2,500 graded cards. Again, small number. Jim Kelly, there's 2,100 graded, 44 10s. Herschel Walker, 1,500 graded, 34 10s. So you can see why this set, for like the real avid collectors, really they hone in on this, because they know that these populations aren't going to change at all. You're not going to find these sets and then flip these cards and get 10s anymore. It's going to be extreme. It would be fun to watch that Reggie White card for the next 10 years. If there's more than 7, that would surprise me. And when you look at the prices, the Herschel Walker card in January, a PSA 10 sold for around $9,000. So Herschel Walker didn't really have a, real big superstar career. I know he's a very well-known name and had a great college career, and people in Georgia love him. But
won 3 Super Bowls for the Dallas Cowboys.
He did. Yes, he did win while not being on that team. That's correct. And then there's a couple Jim Kellys up actually for $5,000 right now. So at a PSA 10. The Reggie White and the Steve Youngs are the higher end cards of those, and I haven't seen any sales, but I definitely into the 5 figures, whether it be $10,000 to $15,000 for a PSA 10. The Reggie Whites might even be more, because you're talking about a PSA count of only 7. But I think that that's why I wanted to talk about this set. And taking it back to that 84 Tops base regular set with the 396 cards, those were miscut often too. You and I have seen those cards. Those cards were like, so Tops really either didn't care about football that year, and it was like, dude, just go cut those. I think about 84 Tops football, like they cut those cards. Like there were so many off-center poorly cut cards. Like I would think of like 84 Tops football, the regular set. There's cards that are like diagonally cut. Right. Like it's just it's maddening. So when you start thinking about like the year of 84 Tops football, it's really an amazing, astonishing year to collect. And if you have 10s, man, you're in rare company.
Yeah, those 84, the regular football. I have so many cards that are diagonally cut, and it's just like,
frustrating. How did this happen? And it looks like the centering's nice, But then you start looking at it and go, is it supposed to be tilted like that? No, it's not. The one other thing I will mention on the back of the cards, they apparently the etching or there's some flaking on that pink background too. So it wasn't just the centering and it wasn't just the flimsy box. There was some flaking on the pink on the back of these USFL cards too. So it really made for a collector's nightmare if you're trying to get these graded. But if you were able to get this card in a high grade, you're probably looking at a substantial profit.
Yeah. That was the thing that I saw too, is there were a lot of cards that actually looked good on the front. And then when you flipped them over, there was flaking and chipping on the back. And when they go to those dark colors on the back, you find it actually quite a bit on the a lot of the Fleer basketball cards too. When they've got those dark colors, in the '89 set, there's a lot of bleeding that goes over to the front when they cut the cards. But yeah, so that stuff tends to chip. One other thing I wanted to kind of bring up before we got further to that I didn't get to, and you kind of alluded to it, but some of the other players. I mean, we talk about the Jim Kellys and the Steve Young and Herschel Walker and those guys, but Scott Norwood was also in this set.
Yes, he was.
You said Vince Evans, who was a backup for the Raiders for many, many years. Ricky Sanders, who ended up winning the Super Bowl with Washington in '88, I think, was Jim Kelly's main target. I think he caught like over 1,000 yards and I think like 12 touchdowns that year. So he was there. Brian Sipe, who had played with the Browns for years and years, he was there. Mel Gray, Doug Williams, you mentioned him, Irv Eatman, who was a really good offensive lineman for the Rams, and Sean Landetta. So,
yeah, Bobby Hebert, another name that was there. Mike Rozier, again, Rozier, another superstar college running back. Craig James, running back again, SMU, also does the broadcasting. Vaughn Johnson. I mean, these guys all had substantial NFL careers. Some of them, most of them. I mentioned Anthony Carter. He was a standout wide receiver for the Vikings. You mentioned Ricky Sanders. I thought Ricky Sanders played for the Redskins, but I might be mistaken.
Washington. I said Washington.
Yeah, so the Redskins. He won a Super Bowl
with the Jim Kelly in the USFL.
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So he played with the Skins in he won a Super Bowl with Doug Williams. Or actually maybe won a Super Bowl with Mark Rippon.
Doug Williams was the quarterback during the Super Bowl, but Rippon during the regular season.
Yes. Well, Rippon won in 92. 91.
Oh, well, it was Sanders played with Doug Williams.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I'll take your word for it. You're the football historian. You're the football historian.
Well, my Broncos were destroyed by them in that game. So
yes, they were. Okay.
Forever etched in my memory.
I'm thinking of 91 when the Redskins beat the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. And I don't know if Ricky Sanders was still on the team there.
I don't either. But I think Rippon was actually the quarterback the year that Doug Williams won the Super Bowl, but ended up getting hurt in the playoffs. And then Williams took over for the Super Bowl game. Okay.
So, but Rippon won in 91.
I believe so.
Yes. Because I believe he was the MVP that year. Because it was at Metrodome in Minnesota.
We got all that straightened out.
We've got this thing down pat. If you want to come to us for NFL knowledge. But, so here's my question for you. Is this set – so as the USFL starts to they're coming back. Mm-hmm. Is there any place in the hobby for these type of leagues anymore? Or was this so unique that, let me hypothetical. USFL comes out with cards for this year's teams. Are you?
I don't think it's a hypothetical. I've seen cards for so many obscure sports this year that I'm pretty sure it's going to happen.
Are you buying? Do you care? Is it just irrelevant at this point?
Yeah, I'm not interested, and the reason being is USFL is back this year. But if you play in the USFL, Matt Lechner, you're going to have to take a pretty big pay cut as well. The salary is going to be about $45,000 for rostered players. If you win that week, you get an extra $850. If you win the championship, you'd get $10,000. So I don't think the USFL is going to be loaded with guys who are probably going to be NFL players anytime soon. I'm sure there will be a few. I mean, I remember from the XFL days. He
Right.
ate me. Had a pretty good NFL career, but if you asked me
what was
his
his
real
name
is today, I couldn't tell you. But was
it Rod Smart?
I think it was. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Rod Smart,
All right.
yeah.
There we go. See, you and I have lived through the XFL, which is obviously was something unique and enjoyable, but the football was not good.
Yeah.
And then there was the World Football League over in Europe, and they actually made cards. Remember those Pro Set cards?
Yeah.
Nobody really emerged from that league who had a card.
Yeah.
I think didn't Kurt Warner play in that league, or maybe it was
I think Danny Warfel.
Someone
Warfel
did,
was a big guy in that league.
Yeah, but the cards, there was nobody like. There's nobody. Let's just put it this way: there was no one like Reggie White, Steve Young that emerged, where you're like, oh, his rookie card is in the World Football League set. Where you're scrambling to go through that pro set, and that's the type of thing that I think was so cool too about a set like this. Was in '84, you're really not expecting Reggie White maybe to become a Hall of Famer, legendary guy, so you're not taking that card out of a set, putting it in a sleeve and protecting it. Steve Young the same way. You probably know they're good players, but they're in this obscure league. You're not really maybe following it as a hobbyist as much as, your traditional Tops. And I know back in that era, you're buying wax from your local hobby shop, if there is one, or your drugstore, and you're building your set by yourself. You're self-collating your sets.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I think that was part of what was happening too. And, I just don't see people buying this set and, looking now forward, if they come out with a 132 card USFL set in 2022, I think that's going to sit on the shelves at Target for a good amount of time without many buyers.
Right. And it actually kind of makes me wonder, I remember collecting back in the 80s and 90s. I don't remember seeing those traded sets very often. I'd go to shows and things and you'd see packs, but I don't remember seeing those sets. It makes me wonder how those sets were distributed in the 80s. And I almost wonder if those things were like, they drop a case off at the stadium and say, sell these. And in that case too, I think people would open them up at the case and at the game and probably look at them and play around with them at the game. And I just wonder if most of those sets, that's how they began their lives, is getting opened up in the stadium as people were watching the game. I know that, you talked a little bit about finding these, and right now wrapped and sealed sets are selling for about $1,000 on eBay. Open ones, or just kind of ones that are in a box, are selling for $500-600. But they actually, I read this article said that cases of these things are basically unheard of. One was purchased at the 2019 National by BBCE. They sold it within a day or two, and no one ever found out how much it was bought and sold for, but it was there. But, these things are super rare. So it's just, like you said, you wonder how many of these were actually made. You wonder how many are still out there in existence, if there's still some in closets or whatever. But I think, one of the other things that we were talking about with just not a lot of cards getting in the upper end of the pop report, I think a lot of it, I think they probably were distributed at these stadiums and got opened up by a little kid, and they were looking at them in the stadium and put back in the box probably haphazardly, and there you go.
Yeah, and you brought up an interesting point about those Tops traded sets, because when I was younger, my goal was always to get I wanted to have every Tops traded set from 1981 to whenever, and I ended up achieving that, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't one of those things where I could go buy. I had to search for it, and sometimes you had to stumble upon somebody at a card show who had the 1983, and you're like, oh wow, I need that one, and maybe it might be overpriced, and you're like, I can't afford it, so I got to wait. And so, but they weren't as readily available to the consumer, and that was baseball. I mean, that was like the highest level that was Tops baseball. And so now we're talking about even more niche. We're talking football. We're talking USFL football. So I think this is something that, if you had one of these and you bought it, I'd be fascinated to know where you got it.
Right. Yeah, I see more of those Tops traded sets now than I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
And I think at that time people didn't think about it. They just bought wax. So
yeah, and maybe those were just boxed in a cases. And I think that was just kind of put away. And I don't know if they didn't have the same credibility as like I'm trying to think back to that era. Everybody was collecting sets, but like the traded sets just they didn't have the same cachet, if you will,
right,
as the full 792 card top set. And not really until, people started discovering, there's a Cal Ripken card in there. Oh, there's a Fernando Valenzuela card in there. And, even then they weren't clamoring for those Tops traded sets. So here we are talking about, a Tops traded-esque set for, again, another niche league in a sport that maybe wasn't as heavily traded or collected back in 1984. But an interesting set nonetheless. There isn't too many quirks with this set. That's the other thing. It's pretty straightforward. It's not like, last week we talked about 89 Fleer and all the variations to some of those. This one's a pretty, plain Jane type of set that just, had the earliest cards of some NFL superstars.
Mm-hmm. Which is very cool. And a lot of those cards still sell for a lot more than the actual first NFL cards. So it's definitely something of interest, and definitely something when you see those out in the wild, it's, it catches your eye every time you see them.
And that's a lot of why we pick these sets. You and I are, out there looking in card shops. We're on eBay, and whenever something catches our eye, we kind of stop and pause and go, well, why did that catch our eye? Well, what makes that unique? And that's really how we choose these sets, right? That's how we choose sets that we want to do research on. We want to then share with our viewers, who are hopefully listening live, or if they're listening to us on our podcast. So if you are listening on our podcast, we are live every Wednesday at 10:30 on our YouTube channel. That's Central Standard Time. And if you're on our YouTube channel, go to our podcast at Apple Podcasts. Look for the CardFellas Show. Got to get that plug in before we wrap up our talk on the 1984 USFL Tops football set. So I think you've established that you're not investing in 2022 USFL cards.
That's
I
right.
probably will, because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I like to do that. But the price has to be right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the interesting thing is going to be what's going to happen April 16th when this kicks off. Is it going to look just like the NFL? Is it going to look like anything new or different? But I don't know. It's going to be interesting. And of course, you and I will be watching, and we'll see how the hobby reacts to it.
Yeah, I think when they had that, I think it was the AAF a few years ago. It ended basically right when COVID started. I watched.
That's right.
And I thought they were actually pretty good, pretty entertaining. I thought the football was on par with watching kind of a mid-level college type of game, and I enjoyed it. So hopefully this kind of goes that route, and I think it will. We talk about the money and we laugh at $45,000 a year, but if you're a kid that just got out of, just finished up your college football career, and somebody says, hey, we're going to give you another opportunity to play football in a stadium, and we're going to pay you $50,000 a year, I'd sign up for that.
Absolutely. And I think, anytime an athlete has an opportunity to play a sport that they truly love a little bit longer, go for it, man. Life is long for a lot of people, and, don't speed it up to get to the real world. Live in that fantasy world for a little bit. Chris and I will tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk a little fantasy world now. Let's put the USFL set to bed. A really cool set, and when I see them out there, if I've got that kind of dollar in my pocket, I try to pick them up just because they're cool cards. But NFL, a little bit of news here. Let's pull this up. Look at that jersey.
Is that one of the coolest jerseys of all time, or what?
I think it is. This is, if you're listening on the podcast, this is the Kelly Green Eagles jersey. It's coming back. It'll be in 2023. The Eagles are going to run this. Some obscure helmet rule stops them from being able to do it this year. But it's kind of the same jersey that Randall Cunningham and Reggie White and those guys are wearing. It's that kind of the medium shade of green. But that'll be back in 2023, and it'll be awesome.
The reason I shot you that picture and I was it reminds me of Randall Cunningham, right? I mean, if for anybody back in '87 who collected, I mean, if you have a Randall Cunningham rookie card, and I do, it's a PSA 7, not a great grade, but the card, he's wearing the iconic green jersey, and it brings me back. And I saw that, I'm like, oh man, we got to talk about this. And the other one, so if you see that card, let's say there's a picture of Jalen Hurts, and you're a Jalen Hurts collector, and he's wearing that sweet uniform in a picture, and it's on a card. Like, as a collector, you want that card. I mean, obviously this one's Photoshop, someone did that, but let's say there's a game action shot of him wearing that iconic green. Like, as a hobby, like you look at that as art, right? And it's just like that's what you look forward to. You see those cool jerseys, it's iconic. And the Buccaneers are going to do the same thing in 2023. They're going to go to the creamsicles, and I don't know if Tom Brady's going to be wearing those, but a Tom Brady creamsicle card would be pretty dang cool. Right. And I think that's just cool. Again, getting them out of their normal uniforms back to these iconic uniforms that kind of made these teams really, really just, you pay attention to them when they're wearing either those, Kelly Green rich Eagles jerseys or the creamsicle Tampa Bay Buccaneers jerseys. And I'd find myself collecting a card if the guy was wearing that.
My favorite part of this jersey, and you can't really see it much in this photo, is the eagle on the sleeve.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the best part. I love that.
No question. Yeah. So if they snap some pictures and put it on a card of those uniforms, especially Brady in a creamsicle uniform, I'm probably buying that card. Can't you see that? Like I can envision it now. Like this would be one of the best cards, and I'm going to tell Panini to do this right now. A Panini like chrome. I would go horizontal. Tom Brady, kind of full body throwing. Kind of the way I'm thinking of this is the chrome. LeBron James backwards dunk tribute to Kobe, where it's kind of low. Like I would see that if they did that with the creamsicle jersey of Tom Brady. Take my money.
You're in.
Take my money.
Speaking of that, new head coach in Tampa.
Yeah, breaking tonight.
Yeah, Todd Bowles is going to be taking over there, so that's interesting.
So let me ask you this: speculation, is that Tom Brady's doing, or does Bruce Arians really have, a reason to leave? Do they just not like each other? That's the speculation, right? People are saying Tom Brady wins again.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think I texted you last year during the football season. I remember watching the Buccaneers win a game, and Bruce Arians went to walk across the field to shake hands. And I mean, it looked like he was really struggling. I mean, it looked like he had something really going on with him. So, I mean, I don't know what he looks like every day when he's walking around the offices, but that night when he walked across the field, it was startling to see him move. And maybe that's one of those things where, he looks around, and I don't think Bruce Arians, I'm sure he could buy a few 86 Fleer boxes. And
he's doing all right.
I don't need to do this anymore. Maybe I'll just go and hang out on a boat with my grandkids. And
they're going to kick him upstairs, so he's still going to make a paycheck from the Buccaneers. Doing what? I don't know. From a hobby perspective, does this change your thoughts at all on Tom Brady or?
I was really shocked that Leftwich didn't get the Jacksonville job this year. And I think with Leftwich staying there, and Leftwich and Brady are kind of best buds. And I think that offense will Todd Bowles will handle the defense, and Leftwich stays with the offense. I don't think much changes. I think Tom Brady's been around this game long enough, and he's also, obviously a very cerebral guy. So I don't think losing Arians is probably that big of a loss to the offense. And Bowles will run the defense, and it'll be Brady and Leftwich. I don't think it changes much.
Yeah, that's a great point. Your mention of Byron Leftwich got me thinking of 6 degrees of Byron Leftwich, and one of that is Randy Moss at Marshall. And I read a quick Twitter blurb. Randy Moss scored like 55 touchdowns at Marshall. He never won a college game without scoring a touchdown. And that just, it got me thinking about the hobby and Randy Moss. I see his cards pop up, and I don't find myself inclined to buy him. And he was my favorite Viking of all time. And so, like, it just, you know, that name made me think of Randy Moss. Byron Leftwich made me think of Randy Moss. This has nothing to do with anything. I don't have a point. I'm just saying Randy Moss in the hobby. Not a whole lot of, I don't see a lot of his cards or the demand for his cards. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't really have a point.
I compare him to another Randy, and I think you'll get a kick out of this, and that's Randy Macho Man Savage.
Okay.
And that he was very electric and very loud all the time. And when he was a good guy, a lot of people didn't like him. And when he was a heel, a lot of people didn't like him. And he, just because he had this such machismo wherever he went and whatever he did. And I think even as Vikings fans, when he's playing for the Vikings, you know, you kind of knew that the guy wasn't quite right. And then you had to ship him off to the Raiders, and he didn't do much there. And then they went to the Patriots, and then he came back to the Vikings. And, you know, you have those guys that move around like that. And I think, you know, when the Vikings dealt him to the Raiders, I think a lot of it was like, let's wash our hands of this guy, you know. And I think there's a few other guys, and I've been going through a lot of old cards lately. And I remember there was a couple other guys that I ran into this week, and I'm looking at them going, this is a guy that no one likes. There's no fan base that's like, that's our guy.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's, you know, and it got me thinking, because I was one of the biggest Randy Moss fanboys. I don't think I have a single card of his in my collection. And nor do I seek him out. So it's just interesting. He's just one of those guys that, you know, you mentioned Byron Leftwich. He played at Marshall. Randy Moss played at Marshall. That's all. Again, I have no point to that. Just something that I like to, you know, connect some dots to sometimes. As you know, Chris, and our viewers and our listeners, sometimes I just talk. Yeah.
I just thought of one of those guys, Gary Sheffield.
100%.
He's really one of the greatest hitters in baseball, but moved around so much. And when he left the Brewers probably would be the place that would say that's our guy. But when he left, it was kind of an ugly deal. And I just don't think he has a fan base that's like, yeah, that's Gary Sheffield's our guy. Even though when you look at those numbers, like, he had an incredible career.
Right.
So
yeah, no, it's there. And those guys are, I mean, if we put our heads together for, you know, a couple hours, I'm sure we could come with a long list of that. And, but Randy Moss is one of those guys at the top of my list, because, like I said, owned his jersey, wanted his autograph. Now I don't care to own his cards. And a lot of guys from my, my time growing up, I want those cards now. I want the Magic Johnsons. I want the Larry Birds. Those are the cards that I grew up with, so I want those. But, you know, Randy Moss maybe came after my nostalgic phase.
Yeah, there you go. Here's one that we talked about this week, too. This is our guy, Benny Montgomery. We showed everyone his Benny and the Jets signature a few weeks ago. Here's another signature from Benny Montgomery that just surfaced this week, and he signed his card. Jordan Lawler, who was a prospect from the Diamondbacks. He put a little cactus next to it too. So I think Benny Montgomery was having a good time when he signed his cards, and you can take this however you want it, but he is based in Colorado. So who knows if there was some other things going on there when he was signing those
It's cards. It's legal there. But no, I just, I find this guy fascinating. Like, he just, he goes against the grain. Here he is signing somebody else's name. It sounds like this Jordan Lawler and him are buddies. So, he didn't just pick some random dude like Vic Damone or something. He's like, I'm gonna sign my buddy's name on my card. Like, he's just odd, man, and I appreciate it. I guess the thing is, if you're like a true fan of this Benny guy and he turns out to be good, and you like no, I want a Benny Montgomery autograph. I just want a legit autograph from you, dude. Just sign your flipping name, man.
Right.
And he's like, no, I'm, Mike Concho this week. It's
Right.
like, no, I don't know, but I still find it interesting. I find it fun, and again, it's one of those things. It makes that card extremely rare, right? Like now you're talking about one of ones that shouldn't be one of ones, and the more these guys get into the hobby and they pay attention to the fact that the hobby can make money, I think you're going to see more of this. I actually saw a clip on YouTube. AJ Dillon, the running back for the Green Bay Packers, big time into cards. Mm-hmm. And what he was doing is he's starting to get guys to autograph cards and claiming them to be like one of ones. So, I mean, he's looking at it from an investment standpoint too. And just really unique to see how some of these athletes are taking advantage of this trend and, hopefully building a better, stronger financial future for themselves, which, I'm all for, because these athletes have a short shelf life. It's a business. And if they can take advantage of every element, kudos to them.
Sure. You wanted to talk some PSA, so I'm going to let you take the stage. You had some stuff you wanted to talk about. Go ahead with that.
Yeah, I will. I'll just, again, talk about this article that was in Forbes magazine. It was published today, and they talked to Nat Turner. Forbes magazine did. And Nat Turner is the CEO of Collectors, of course, which is the company that runs PSA. We talked about that. He did an interview with Forbes and included some interesting tidbits that I found interesting, and it's not really new if you're following the hobby, but it just kind of tells you and shows you just how massive PSA has gotten and is looking to expand to become really the only game in town when it comes to the hobby. So for one, PSA is massive. They have a stranglehold on pretty much everything, and they have the finances to be able to do it. One of the things you consider or you look at when you read the article is, how are these other grading companies going to survive? Last month, PSA graded 750,000 cards. Now, in contrast, SGC 82,000, Beckett 64,000, and so I mean, you look at it right there, and they're so massive, and the reason that they're able to do what they're doing is they're starting to hire more people. Clearly, that's essential. They're not just hiring more people; they're creating like grading card university, where they're training random people who maybe don't have any background in this to become graders. Now, the other interesting parts are Turner has a background in technology, like med tech. And so he's talking about incorporating some of that technology into grading cards. And that shouldn't be new to anybody. Like artificial intelligence is already being used by some companies. I think HGA uses some.
Master P.
Yes. And so the idea of using artificial intelligence is definitely something that's been talked about. And so PSA is talking about it now too. They talked about, and this is interesting, Chris, for you and I to think about, see how it's going to work, an app that you scan your card using your own personal cell phone on an app, and it tells you kind of an estimated grade. So of course there's going to be a lot of questions to that, but if you scan your card with your smartphone on an app and it tells you you're probably going to get a 7, you might consider different. So that to me sounded fascinating. Like, okay, tell me more. I'm interested to see this, but that's where this technology is taking us. At least that's where Nat Turner is seeing technology take us. We're not there yet, but again, think about all the ways we use technology. Why can't it be used for grading cards and at least scanning cards at this point? Lastly, now Turner says he hopes to return to normal submission processes soon. What soon is, I don't know. But right now he's, we talk about the $50 lottery allocation for your cards, and you get 5 to 20 cards or whatever the case may be. And that's the lowest you can get a card graded for. But one of the things that was mentioned in the article is basically they're conceding the days of $12 card submissions are done. And so it got me thinking, Chris, what is the lowest price, or what is the price point that you think would flood PSA again? If, let's just say, they open the floodgates, no allocations, they just said life is back to normal. What's the lowest price that you think would flood the market?
Yeah, today, I guess if we're talking, late March, early April 2022, I'd say probably 25 to $30.
Yeah, that's my number too.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of things that go. I mean, it would be great for him to say that, but a lot of things are going to happen for that to really come to fruition. I mean, I've been buying rookie cards of really kind of nice prospects and players in PSA 9 grades for like $9 and $10 over the last few weeks, and it's like, why would you even send a card if you know that's what you're going to get out of it? Because the reality is, and we all look at those 10 numbers and go, yeah, it'll be great if I get a 10, I can sell my card for this. But I think if you're sending a card based on what the 10 is selling for, you're probably going to lose money, So I think that, it'll be interesting to see. And right now we live in a world where, I think people still have money, but with the way things are going right now with grocery costs and gasoline costs, and then all that is going to kind of go through the economy and make everything else more expensive. It will be interesting to see what everyone's wallets look like in the next 6 months, and if people are still willing to spend this kind of money to do this stuff. And I think it'll be interesting. It's fun to be able to sit there and go, yeah, we're not going to have $12 grading anymore. But, if no one's submitting things, and they're definitely in a supply and demand business. That's what they're in. And when it starts getting to the point where demand is going down and people aren't willing to spend $50 to get the cards graded, but maybe in 6 months it's like, yeah, at $30 we really got to think about it. Yeah. And maybe you start seeing stuff for $15-$20 again. Who knows? I mean,
we really don't. And I think your price point is exactly on. I think 25, 30 it will be the lowest we see for a while, if it ever gets there. Because as you mentioned, the $50 ones, the allocations that they're still doing, they do it every Tuesday and Thursday, where they give out 20 card allocations now. Like for the lottery, you get that virtual line. I've tried to do it the last several weeks. I can't get an allocation to me. I can't get an allotment. So that tells me people are lining up to send them $50 cards. Yeah. So why lower the price now? If I can't get in to send them a card for $50, they don't need to lower it. And so I think that $50 card valuation at the lowest level is going to stay for a while. Yeah. That's my opinion. And the other part that I shared with you offline as well is those $50 card allotments that they're giving out, those are getting graded in a month now. So I got a 5-card. I got my 5-card grade back that I sent in on March 1st. It was entered into the system March 1st, and I just got grades back 2 days ago. So I'll get those cards back by the end of the week. So we're talking a 30-day turnaround for some of these $50 cards. And you and I have been talking about this. We've had cards sitting at PSA for over a year. Yeah. Now, those are what, $12, $15? So if I'm PSA, which one am I grading? Which one am I charging out? The $50 ones or the $12 ones?
Right.
The $50 ones are getting graded faster because then I can charge your credit card, Matt, and I can then make more money faster.
Yeah. And that will be the interesting thing is right now, you're right. They're still sitting on, I would guess, millions of submissions that are $12 submissions. And at this point, they have no reason to say, hey, let's start doing some, for $20 again. But once those $12 submissions are cleared out and they're adding all of this capacity at some point those $50 allotment events that you're signing up for, at some point that's just going to be the regular price.
Yes.
And if that's the regular price that you can just go in and submit as many cards as you can, but they've brought on all of these buildings and all these employees and it's still not keeping them busy, then that's when you start having reductions in price. But yeah, you're right. In the next 6 months, probably not, because they're already sitting on millions of cards from last year that were submitted for $12, and they're not in a hurry to even get to those. So.
Yeah, and in that article from Forbes today, it's a must read. It's really interesting. They talk about the avalanche of cards coming in when there was rumors that they were going to raise the prices. So you and I remember talked about this. We're like, you have
that's our submissions that are sitting there right now.
Right. You have like a week to figure out what to send for $25 because the prices are going up. Yeah. They said that they basically the amount of orders that came in forced the post office in California to basically shut down because they had so many orders coming to them. They had to get security and rent buses to get cards from the post office to their office. Like, that's the type of video or pictures I would have loved to have seen. Like your box, my box in the back of a bus being driven to PSA. That's how massive that influx was. And so that's what they're working through now. And you're exactly right. As soon as they get through that, you're going to see them open the floodgates to $50. And I think that's where it stays for a while. But if they can get those out in a month, that's great. But you're not going to see the cards that you were talking about get graded ever again, right? That's really those cards are probably long gone, never going to be graded again. Yeah, there should be a documentary. No, you're absolutely right. And if PSA wasn't so damn protective of their area, like let a camera in there, show that would be fascinating. But you can't. Too many trade secrets, right?
Yeah, one of our inside jokes between ourselves is the 1988 Edgar Martinez card that you had graded. And, no one's going to send that card in, that 88 Fleer Edgar Martinez card, and no one's sending that in for $50. So
I spent $8.88, people, to get that graded, and I thought it was a 10. It came back a 9. I ended up selling it for like $25 still, though.
Right.
That's the funny part about that story. But the other funny part of that story was it was the Edgar Martinez, I think, 88 Fleer? And he's sitting on the bench with this grumpy look. Right. And so I'm like, I'm as happy as Edgar Martinez when I got that grade back and that card back. And it took like a year, but there you go. Edgar.
It was great submitting cards in 2020 and getting them in 2021 when the thirst for PSA cards was just unrelenting. And we had a good time with that.
We did. We'd send in 120 card orders, and it was like, it was like $400, right? And you make your money back.
Than that. It was, 1,000 card order was costing us about $900, $9 a card.
Yeah, $9. Yeah, $9 a card. I guess. Yeah. My math is really bad. Say, why don't you give a shout out to the hat you're wearing? And for the podcast listeners, I'll let you explain the hat.
This is my Spuds baseball cards hat, and he doesn't know that I'm doing this during the show, but it's an eBay seller. You can go Spuds baseball cards on there, or his name is Freddie Steele, Stiehl, and he does auctions like every 2 weeks and has some really cool wax. He does a lot of junk wax stuff, but he also has he has 86 Tops football, 84 Tops football that he's doing every 2 weeks, and you can get in on his packs. And I can tell you, the stuff that I've bought, I've hit a lot of the good rookie cards in some of these sets. So I'm pretty confident that they're legit packs because I've gotten some of the good cards in some of these packs. And just a super good guy. Usually throws some free stuff in the box. I'll usually buy maybe 5 or 6 lots every week or every 2 weeks when he does it. But cool guy, Freddie Steele. Now I'm giving people this tip, and I'll have more competition on my.
Yeah, well, we should win. We'll maybe we'll scrub this from the podcast. No, we always like to help out people in the hobby, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, great week. Great show this week. Thanks for doing this again. It's a good time. Next
Always a
week,
good
we're going to
time.
talk basketball. Next show we're going to do, and we actually may sneak in a recorded show between now and next Wednesday. But either way, the next episode is going to be basketball. We're going to talk 96, 97 Tops basketball. And that's Kobe's rookie year, Steve Nash, Ray Allen. Just an incredible array of rookies that year. So that'll be a cool show.
And a whiny-faced Allen Iverson, his rookie card. He's complaining. I'll bring that card out when we talk about that one. He's complaining. It's a good way to start your career. He's a guy who is complaining to the ref or his opponent. So that'll be a fun one to talk about. Always fun to chat about the rookie class of 1996-97.
Thanks to everybody for watching on the YouTube. Nolan Void stuck with us pretty much the whole show, so appreciate that. And then everybody listening on the podcast platform, check it out on the YouTube. If you're on YouTube, check it out on the podcast platforms. For Matt, I'm Chris. We'll see you next time.